I remember one encounter I had in the trip that Alf described at the beginning of the project when they sent us all down a working mine. And you know, we were actors and city boys mostly. I remember walking up to a guy underground and saying something that must have sounded pretty stupid. I said, "So, have you worked as a miner a long time, sir?" And very earnestly. And the guys who were standing around this guy just started laughing. And he just looked at me, and if you'll permit me to attempt the Cape Breton accent, he said, "I've been 35 years underground, buddy." And everybody, and I said, "Oh, yeah." And he just looked at me and smiled. I get it. No, miners are special people, and so are mining families and mining women too. If anybody, it's such a tough life, and I think we were fortunate. We were really fortunate that we got to meet some of those folks. I think if we got anything right, if there's anything kind of genuine about what we achieved trying to play people like that, it's due to getting to rub shoulders with people from the town. Even in the small town, was, you know, it's a special part of Canada, Cape Breton. It's a special kind of place, you know. So if you ever get a chance to visit there, go ahead and do so.
Something I noticed do you remember when we picked up our battery packs for the first time to go in the mine? And each battery pack with a light had a number on it. And someone, the number 13 came out, he says, "No, you're not going down there with that one. That's bad luck." I always remember that. Wow. Why do you have it?
It's the guy that
bingo.
Okay, over here.
A few of you got elaborate fail scenes. Was there any wide casting or any difficult things that you had to go through for some of your jobs?
It was my second movie, and I got flown to LA for the body casting. And it was the Berman Brothers, was it? They're very famous. They've done a lot of stuff since then. And apparently David Bowie had been in the studio. It must have been The Man Who Fell to Earth. Is that all right in a timeline or something? Or around anyway, that was pretty exciting. And they told me a couple stories about David Bowie, but I'm not going to share it because that would be wrong. But it was just like fun. I mean, gosh, it was so much fun. You know, they just slather you full of stuff, and it's cold and it's wet. Stick stuff up your nostrils and straws up your nostrils, and it's just like, it was just so exciting. And then I had this really weird experience because some of you, as some of you know, my body was for sale on eBay. It was the weirdest thing. Like, look, and I don't think I'd seen a picture of my prosthetic until, you know, like it was 20 years later. I'm looking like it looked so real. It was freaky. I actually thought to myself, maybe I should buy it because it's just so weird that I'm out there for sale and it's just wrong. And what if people don't pay a lot of money for me? And, you know, I had a couple of ego problems, but I don't know what happened to it. Somebody's got it or something.
I also had to have the prosthetic mold made, and I had to meet George Mahalka at the Toronto airport before I went down because, what's my character's name? Howard. As you know, he gets hung, and so George wanted to make sure that I had the proper postures as one who would be hung in a mine shaft. So he had me meet him at the airport restaurant, and he had me stand up, and everyone's eating their breakfast and all this. He said, "Okay, now stand up, and how are you going to do it?" And I just stand, well, like this. Well, like this, you know. It was embarrassing because people were looking, but he was paying the bill. And so when finally he took a few shots and gave me some, and I headed down to LA. And the following morning, I went to the studios where I was going to have a prosthetic mold of my body done, and I could see John Travolta's head, and I think Lauren Green, and all these people. I thought, wow, I'm really in good company here. Yeah. So it was time for me to strip down and down to a little bathing suit, and they started to lather me up with Vaseline. So that they could put the plaster on the front of my body and then move towards the back. And at one point, by this time I was there for an hour and 20 minutes standing still, like this, taking on the form. And at one point they started to to put the plaster on my shoulders. They were pushing too hard, and I started to fall forward. guys! And they grabbed me and pushed me back up, and then I had to stay there like for another 20 minutes after they were done. And then they had to very slowly remove the plaster cast. They hadn't put enough Vaseline on my body, especially on my inner thighs and my chest. And it was, I had tears coming down. Rip. Women, I really sympathize with you. I know how you feel. Thank you.
We're going to take a couple more questions right here.
Yeah, Mr. Oliver, how was it like working with Don Franks?
Sweet, wonderful man.
He's an interesting man. You know, I was in my second year of theater school, and I was watching him work, and they were trying to get a focus on the camera, and I've never seen this before. This is an old, experienced actor. He put his lighter up against his cheek, like this, so that they could come in and get a direct focus, and I was like, okay, lesson number 1. Acting 101. But he was very calm, very economical in his gestures, his movements, his dialogue, and I enjoyed just watching him and learning from him.
Some of you may not know, but when Don turned up on the set to start work on that picture, he was wearing his hair long, and I mean long, literally halfway down his back. And it was long, gray, salt and pepper hair. And what you saw in the picture was actually a wig. He would tie his long locks up. He's, I may be wrong on this, guys. My understanding is that Don is affiliated with a native nation back in Canada.
But he isn't actually himself, but he is affiliated, but he's not...
Yeah, no, he's not native himself, but he has a close affiliation with them. So he wears his hair in native Canadian
He
style.
kind of looks a lot like Willie Nelson.
Yeah. I saw Don about 2 months ago, actually. He came to the company I worked for in Toronto to audition for a role, which he got. And he's currently acting for a colleague of mine, good friend of mine, who also works for the same company in Toronto. And he's an excellent singer, too. Do I have that right, guys?
Oh, yeah. Fine musician, excellent singer. And it was never, whenever there was not a camera on him, he never wore shoes. That's the other thing that I remember. And he was always like in this perfect centered state of calm. I was like, how are you? How's things going today? He talked very quietly like that. And he was always very cool.
He also does a lot of voiceover work.
We have one last question right here.
This question for Chris Peter, and I believe the other before too. How was it working with mask?
Well, the most interesting thing about the mask in my second year at theater school, which we had to get permission to leave school to go do this film, and in the second year we were doing mask work, which was high Italian Commedia dell'arte mask work. And when they put the mask on me, at first it didn't have the black and eye pieces. And there's one scene, Killing Happy, where you can actually see my cheeks. And they didn't want that. And they said, well, let's just blacken your face. I said, well, that's not gonna work. And so in the town that I grew up in, they did a lot of detailing on cars. And I said, well, why don't we just get windshield tinting and just put it on the glass? And so I worked under purple haze through the whole film so that the camera couldn't see into my eyes. And the thing about being in the mask, and about one of the first questions is being down in the mine, it's very sequestered in there. And it's just like, if the director goes, cut, well that wasn't very good, you can go, well I didn't think it was all that bad. And you can mutter away at yourself and nobody would hear you. It was great.
A very similar experience for me. The mask that I was using had no ventilation. The air that I breathed out, I'd breathe in. And I'd do that over and over until they said cut, and it was a slice of hell. The lens is constantly fogged up, and we had the same experience. There was a black guy character in the story that was a suspect, the sheriff, and Jensen Ackles. And so they didn't want you to know who it was. So they were using me, and they were painting my eyes black, and they did a bit of the filtering of the lenses and stuff like that. And you know, I'm throwing a real pickaxe or a fiberglass pickaxe at, like, you know, $1 million actresses' faces and stuff like that, and I can barely see them. So I measure, and I go, okay, ready, action. And I just stop, you know, because I might as well have my eyes closed. I couldn't see them anyway.
I'm glad I wasn't in that movie, boy.
But that's why they hired a stuntman, not the actor, because the actor they had hired said, I'm going to need a stunt double for a lot of this stuff because I can't see out of the mask. And then they said, oh, we don't have the budget for that, so he lost the job and I got it. Usually the actors take my job, and you know, this time I won.
That's right.
Okay, we're going to ask the group to stand together and everyone can take photos like a group shot.